Welcome to WagerTalk TV. I am Kelly Stewart, joined today by two of my favorite guys, Ralph Michaels at Cal Sports LV and Marco D'Angelo at Marco in Vegas. So usually when you guys are both here, we have a lovely disagreement. So I don't know who I'm going to agree with here. You guys got to make a case for me. This line's kind of bounced around. It's now Stanford minus 14, 48.5. Looks like somebody played Stanford and then somebody else came back on it. Ralph, I'm going to start with you. It's a revenge game for the Cardinal after getting beat last year by San Diego State. How are you looking to bet this one?
She started with her first favorite, and then she'll go to her second favorite next. So just so you know that. You know, it's a revenge game, but you can understand why Stanford lost last year. You know, they were an 8.5-point favorite. And you got to remember, they went to Australia to play Rice. Then they opened up at USC. And then they had a third straight game away from home at San Diego State. So, you know, while they lost as a favorite, again, I understand that situation. But in this case, I think the line's bounced down a little bit. Stanford suspending. Now, three starters are injured, not suspended, including their center and a cornerback, their starting center and starting cornerback. So that takes off a little bit. But I love Rocky Long. I love the 3-3-5 defense. I love that they played Stanford last year. And yes, Love got 184 yards, 14.2 yards per carry. But it gives them another year to look at that film and make adjustments on that.
Marco, what do you think about this one? This is something situational I always like to look at. Here's a San Diego State team, really good Mountain West team. Not saying anything bad about them, but Stanford does have USC on deck. How much of that needs to be taken into consideration here?
Well, obviously that would be a concern, but the fact that they lost last year to this team in the same type of situation makes it they're not going to look past San Diego State. And when you lose to one of the little brothers, so to speak, in the state, you know, we always liked the home dog. And last year, you know, we used to do a podcast where we had the sandwich game of the week. Well, that was the ultimate sandwich spot last year, sandwiched in between those two games. How could Stanford really be prepared and look for this team?
And they have UCLA on deck.
Yeah, that's what a sandwich, I mean, for our guys that don't know, you know, a sandwich spot is when they've got a big game the week before this one and a big game the week after. This is the one in the middle, and it's the lesser of the three teams. It's easy to look past that type of team, and especially from a Mountain West team. They're not going to do that this year, and it's the first game of the season. Now, unfortunately, they do have a few injuries, Stanford. That's a concern. You know, anytime you lose a center, that's a big injury on the offensive line. But this offensive line, I mean, you're talking about a good offensive line that can run the football. And last year, you look at the stats, San Diego State, they were able to run the football. Stanford's defense has always been their bread and butter. Last year, it wasn't. This defense got gashed many times, and San Diego State was able to run the football 49 times. They won the time of possession in this game like 42-18. It was sick for what they had. Stanford has this circled. I think Stanford comes out, and we know Bryce Love, he came back. This is a guy that's a candidate for the Heisman Trophy this year. If he stays healthy, he's one of the best backs in the country.
And, you know, Stanford was a different team down the stretch with KJ Costello at quarterback. I mean, Chris played in that first game at San Diego State, but they were much different. But, you know, again, I agree with some of Marco's points, but you still have the Stanford team that gets a lead and sits on the lead. They never run the ball up. That's why they're 3-7 as a home favorite the last 2 years. And San Diego State, what do? Well, they play defense. They run the ball. Yes, they lose Penny, a 2,000-yard rusher. Yes, they got a guy in the wings, not nearly as good as Penny, but San Diego State is 5-0 as a dog the last 3 years, and that's the reason they're
You hit the nail on the head. My biggest thing with laying double digits, 2 touchdowns with Stanford, is they are the Kansas State Wildcats of the Pac-12. They play 2 vanilla football, and I think this one tends to be a little bit closer than I'd like it to be. So I got to side with Ralph on this one and take the 2 touchdowns with San Diego State. Guys, Tuesday is always $2 Tuesdays, and you can get the hottest handicapper at WagerTalk's best bet for just $2.